Hello there, EnderSword here again, this time with a Silver League replay sent in to us by the Zerg player iArjay up here in the top left-hand corner. His opponent on the bottom right-hand corner is BillKillgore, the Terran player and our bad guy for today. The three key things that I'm going to be focusing on this game are number one, larva management. Making sure that you're not leaving larvae just on the ground waiting, and making sure that you're constantly keeping up with your supply so that you don't supply block yourself and are forced to have them sitting there on the ground. The second thing we're going to look at is creep spread, or in this game, the absolute lack of creep spread at all. There are no creep tumors that were put down in this entire game, and I'll show you the impact of that on how play develops. The third thing is going to be the expansion timing and keeping up your macro and the link for those in Zerg. The other two races can just add production facilities when they want to increase their production, but for the Zerg, it's actually the expansions themselves and the hatcheries themselves that give you the production to make you capable of spending your money. And a lot of Zergs lack on that and end up accumulating a large amount of money because of not having enough production. So into what's going on, we've got the Overlord going out to scout one location, the second Overlord coming down to spot in front of the natural. That's a good thing to do to make sure that there's no bunkery shenanigans going on here. The hatchery first build is chosen. It is pretty safe on this map. There's a few natural kind of chokes here that make that pretty reasonable to do. He does have the drone scouting out the Terran base. It is important to still scout with the drone. Some Zergs really only send the Overlord. You do have to still take a poke around with the drone as well, or else you're going to get things really late or miss things, and it's very easy to deny the Overlord. In terms of larva management, there is a lot sitting here on the ground now. We've got 3 on the ground. It's never good, particularly early in this game, to have any sitting there waiting, but it's particularly deadly to have 3 sitting there waiting. 1 or 2, you're just delaying yourself in getting the unit or drone out. But if you've got 3 on the ground, the hatchery is no longer producing larvae for you. It's no longer naturally giving you more production. So you have to make sure that you never get to 3 on the ground unless you're very specifically saving them for something, some production shift, but that's not the case here early on in the game. Checking back in on that scouting drone, we can see that he turned himself into an extractor, but there's not even a Marine out on the field in the Terran base yet, so he wasn't actually forced to stop scouting and wouldn't be until just now when the Marine comes out. So instead of seeing that there's 2 barracks and a factory going down, iArjay only sees that there's a barracks going down. He does see this eventually morphing into an orbital command. But you're missing out on a lot of information by prematurely stealing that gas. There's no real reason that early in the game to try and stop the Terran from taking the gas that quickly. They usually don't do so. So there was no hurry to rush right into that, and he would have been able to get more information and see that these buildings, probably not the starport, but at least see that the factory and barracks were going down, and see that there was no add-on added to the barracks up here. Marine takes a poke around here, looking around, la la la, but we're supply blocked. So he was forced to make 2 overlords to catch up to the supply before he's able to produce any more units. The Marine, there's really no army whatsoever here. The Marine was able to pick off a drone before the Queen killed him, and we get a defensive spine crawler going down. The Overlord positioning is important in these games, particularly against any unit or any ranged army, whether it's Terran or Protoss. These are just sitting ducks out front. Stalkers or Marines can just come in and pick one of those off, know that they're not on creep and know they can get away, and they just supply blocked you again without really any commitment. You don't want to just hang them out front. Speaking of supply blocking, we can see a situation where he's going to do it again in a moment. You want to be keeping an eye on your supply. A bunch of larvae just popped out, and he thought, okay, I'm going to make a round of drones, but then instantly supply blocked himself and overreacts by making 4 overlords at the same time. So just pumping 400 minerals that he didn't really need to spend all at once or invest all at once into overlords, so that he can get really, really far ahead on his supply. You'll want to avoid doing the overlords in batches. You just constantly want to be adding 1 or 2 to each production round that you're doing. A lot of people get it in their mind that, okay, this time I'm only making drones, this time I'm only making roaches, this time I'm only making overlords. That's not the way you want to approach it. It's perfectly fine to have a bunch of larvae and then say, okay, I'm going to add 4 drones, 3 roaches, and 2 overlords, or 6 lings, 2 roaches, and 2 overlords. Like, you want to be mixing up what you're actually making and balancing it out. Don't get stuck in the mentality of, I'm making this, and only make that thing, because you're not properly balancing your economy, your supply, and your units if you're doing that. At this point, 9 minutes into the game, with this much money accumulating, he really should be going for a third. He probably should have been doing this a little while ago, but certainly by now in the game, it doesn't look like the Terran is doing anything particularly aggressive. It would be nice to see the Overlord come down in position so that you can actually spot to see the timing of this expansion and take a poke in to see what tech is going on, drop a changeling, that sort of thing. But back home, there's no real threat. It doesn't feel scary right now. He should be definitely taking a third. You really should anyway, since getting that up is your source of production. You can see that he's gone towards the Hydra Den, but again, back to the creep problem, there's nothing connecting these 2 bases, so it's hard to move from one to the other. There's no creep spread out front here in this arc. You could probably be easily at this point on the map at this point. And Hydras are so slow off the creep that you really need to make sure that you get that creep out there so that you have some maneuverability. He's even gone ahead and upgraded roach speed, which is great, but not as good when you don't have creep actually supporting it. We get the weird move commanding situation, 2 armies kind of running by each other in the night. If he had taken a little more initiative here, he probably could have poked in and just taken that siege tank out before it had actually gotten up in siege mode and completely wiped this army off the face of the earth. But he could have done so a lot better if there was actually creep out here. Now he's lost control of the Xel'Naga watchtower. The Terran can see what's coming, but without any creep vision, he won't know when this army is moving up, and he won't know what has been reinforcing this army. The danger here would be that he's adding siege tanks to this army and is going to make a push up. So when he makes this counter attack into the Xel'Naga tower eventually, he does so kind of blindly and doesn't know if there's, say, 3 siege tanks back there to just pick his army apart. Whereas if you've got that spread, creep spread, you've got more mobility and you've got more awareness of what is actually going on. And if the Terran wants to deny that for you, they're going to have to waste some scans, which is going to cost them mules, obviously, which hurts their economy. The third finally does go up here, but it's actually finished and nothing is moving over into that position yet. You want to be pulling drones over in anticipation of it being done, not bringing them over later. But I have a feeling he was a bit tunnel vision on his army and moving this towards his opponent. Do finally see drones going behind that. He moves in and there's very little resistance here, really none at this point. He knows that he took out the main army, so this is a pretty safe attack, and he does destroy that. He's transitioned into a spire back home, and we'll see shortly that mentality again of making one unit at a time. We've got 2,500 minerals and 1,000 gas, and we had a lot of larvae available to us at the various bases. So he produces in a way that uses all the gas available to him, but then he will, one, supply block himself again, so you have to make sure you're not doing that. There he goes. And two, he'll only now make mutas solely. There's a couple things wrong with that. One is now you've got the larva production sitting there not making anything else. We've got a lot of them sitting around, more than he has the gas to make. He should be producing something else. The gases here should have gone down immediately, knowing the tech switch that he wanted to do was very gas heavy, so you want that up and available in anticipation of that tech switch, not in response to it now that he's out of it. So once he's out of the gas, he just stops making other units and is leaving the larva there. You want to still be adding lings to it or drones to it, or expanding, putting down another macro hatch, anything. We do get the GG by BillKillgore, who's basically dead. When he sees those mutas come in, he didn't have any defense for it. But if he did, say, have turrets up or anything like that, you're obviously then going to have to continue and transition out of it. So you don't want these larvae just sitting on the ground, not actually doing anything. You do want to make mineral units out of them or get more production up. The other thing to do when you are containing an opponent, and it was a smart decision not to try and just force your way up the ramp here. You know that you've pretty much killed them, but now you want to be a little bit patient and get something out that can actually deal with it. So he was right to contain in this area. However, at this point, you should be sending lings or something to these other bases to make sure that he's not landing command centers. He's got a third one on the way. You know that he lifted this one up. He's going to put it somewhere. You want to keep an eye out on that, whereas iArjay doesn't know that that has happened in this game. Overall, obviously, iArjay did win this and win it pretty handily. It didn't really look like he was in any danger. The Terran didn't have much of an army or much of a threatening force at any point, but you can see from this how much more dominating it could have been if the Zerg had managed their larvae properly and got things out at a much quicker rate. He could be at a completely maxed army and absolutely destroying. He's got this many resources just sitting there. That is a huge army that is just not in existence, and it's just not having enough larva production hatcheries out there. You want to be absolutely taking the map when you get a lead on Terran like this. They can just turtle up and be safe for a long period of time. He obviously didn't defend himself here with turrets, but he could have. So you want to make sure that you just take everything whenever they give you the opportunity, especially when you have this sort of resource available to you. The creep spread has to be everywhere. At this point, should be completely at the front door of the Terran. And if he wants to take it out, it's going to cost him scans and money to do so. And the third thing, of course, just expanding at the right times. Aside from just taking the map, once you've got the advantage, you get the advantage by making sure that you're staying ahead in expansions. So overall, obviously killed his opponent here quite easily, was never in danger, but those are the main things that he can improve on in this game, and I hope that